Peace was broken, but humanity's fury broke the galaxy. The Ultimatum Chamber. The station called Harmony's Gate floated between three dying stars, their fading light casting strange shadows through its transparent aluminum corridors. Built by an ancient race that had long since ascended to pure energy, it served as neutral ground for the most critical negotiations in galactic history. Today it would witness either the end of humanity or the beginning of something the galaxy had never imagined. Commander Marcus Vale stood before the viewing port, watching the massive dreadnoughts of the Galactic Concordat arrive. Each ship dwarfed Earth's largest vessels by a factor of 10. The Zephrony battlecruiser alone carried enough firepower to glass a dozen worlds. The Morvac hive ship pulsed with bioluminescent warnings, its living hull housing millions of warrior drones. The crystalline vessels of the Etherian Commonwealth, refracted space itself, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Behind Vale, his team of 5 humans looked almost comically out of place. Dr. Elena Vasquez, their lead scientist, wore a simple gray jumpsuit. Ambassador Kenji Tanaka adjusted his old-fashioned eyeglasses. Colonel Rebecca Stone checked her analog watch. Tech specialist Omar Hassan typed on what appeared to be an ancient tablet computer, and their youngest member, Lieutenant Maya Patel, sketched notes with an actual pencil on paper. The main doors to the Grand Assembly opened with a harmonic tone that resonated through multiple dimensions. The alien delegates entered with all the pomp their species could muster. The Zephrony delegation floated in, their gaseous forms contained in ornate crystalline shells that sparkled with internal lightning. The Morvac Queen's representative skittered forward on dozens of legs, each step perfectly synchronized to create an intimidating rhythm. The Etherians simply appeared, their forms shifting between solid and translucent as they moved through folded space. At the head of them all came Supremacy Executor Vexa High of the Dominion Collective, a being of pure psychic energy housed in a mechanical body that stood 3 meters tall. When it spoke, reality itself seemed to vibrate. Humans of Earth, its voice echoed through minds rather than ears. You have been summoned to receive the terms of your incorporation into the Galactic Concordat. Vale turned from the window and walked calmly to the designated human section of the assembly floor. His team followed, their footsteps eerily loud in the vast chamber designed to accommodate beings from 1,000 worlds. They sat at a table that looked absurdly primitive compared to the floating energy platforms and dimensional interfaces the other species used. Executor Vexhai activated a holographic display that filled the entire chamber. Star charts showed human space, a pitiful collection of 12 colonized systems surrounded by the vast empire of the Concordat that controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy. The facts are simple, Vexhai continued. Your species has violated 17 universal laws in your expansion. You have refused to submit to Concordat oversight. You have developed weapons deemed too dangerous for primitive civilizations. The Zephrony delegate, a swirling mass of charged particles named Stormsinger, added its voice. Your population numbers barely 15 billion across all worlds. The Concordat represents 800 trillion souls. Your entire military consists of 200 vessels. We command fleets numbering in the millions. Dr. Vasquez quietly opened her notebook and began writing. The scratching of her pen on paper drew amused sounds from several delegates. The Morvac representative, Queen Voice Zekth, chittered in what passed for laughter among her species. They still use physical writing implements. How quaint. Vale spoke for the first time, his voice calm and measured. We are listening to your terms. Executor Vexhai pulsed with satisfaction. The hologram shifted to show detailed requirements. First, immediate cessation of all human military development. Second, surrender of your faster-than-light technology to Concordat scientists for proper regulation. Third, acceptance of Concordat governance over all human worlds, with your leaders serving as regional administrators under our authority. Fourth, immediate population controls to prevent your chaotic breeding from overwhelming assigned territories. Fifth, surrender of all humans with psychic potential for proper training and integration into the collective. The list continued for several minutes. Resource tributes, restrictions on scientific research, Mandatory genetic modifications to make humans more compatible with other species. Cultural reforms to eliminate what the Concordat considered dangerous, human tendencies toward innovation and aggression. Ambassador Tanaka polished his glasses methodically while listening. When Vexhai finished, he stood and bowed politely. Your terms are comprehensive. We will need to discuss this with Earth, Command. The Etherian delegate, a being called Whisper of Stars, manifested more fully into their dimension. There is nothing to discuss. These terms are not negotiable. You have one rotation of your homeworld to accept, or we will begin forcible integration. Colonel Stone looked at her watch. 24 hours. Understood. The contempt from the alien delegates was palpable. Stormsinger's gaseous form crackled with amusement. You cannot seriously be considering resistance. Your weapons are projectile-based. Your ships still use fusion reactors. You haven't even mastered dimensional manipulation. Vale stood up slowly. Before we adjourn, I believe it's only fair that humanity presents its own position. The chamber, filled with various forms of alien laughter. The Morvac Queen voices chittering reached ultrasonic frequencies. Several minor species delegates actually fell from their platforms in mirth. Executor Vexhai's psychic presence radiated amused condescension. Your position? You have no position. You are primitives who stumbled upon FTL travel by accident. The only reason you exist is because the Concordat has been patient. Lieutenant Patel looked up from her sketching. She had been drawing the entire time, her pencil moving in precise strokes. May I show you something? Without waiting for permission, she held up her paper. It was a detailed technical schematic of the Zafrani dreadnought currently holding position outside the station. But there were additions, small marks at critical points throughout the vessel's structure. Stormsinger's form suddenly condensed, becoming more solid. How did you obtain detailed scans of our vessel? Your technology shouldn't be able to penetrate our shields. Patel smiled pleasantly. We didn't scan it. We've been inside it for 3 years. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the constant background hum of the station systems seemed to pause. Dr. Vasquez closed her notebook and stood. While you've been monitoring our visible technological development, we've been pursuing other paths. Humanity learned something important when we first detected your civilizations 2 centuries ago. We learned that you equate advancement with complexity. The more elaborate the technology, the more sophisticated you assume the species. She pulled out a simple metal sphere from her pocket, no larger than a golf ball. This is a quantum cascade device. It's simple, elegant. It requires no exotic matter, no dimensional manipulation, no psychic interfaces, just a basic understanding of quantum entanglement and stellar mechanics. The Etherian delegate shifted through several dimensions rapidly, scanning the device. Impossible. The energy requirements alone would need a structure the size of a moon. By your methods, yes, Vasquez agreed. But humans have always excelled at finding simpler solutions to complex problems. Hassan finally looked up from his tablet. Commander, I'm receiving confirmation from all positions. The demonstration is ready when you are. Vale nodded and turned to address the assembled delegates. 12 years ago, humanity made a decision. We could follow the path of every other species, build bigger ships, develop more complex weapons, create elaborate technologies that advertise our capabilities. Or we could do what humans have always done. We could be clever. He walked to the center of the chamber, his footsteps echoing. Every major Concordat vessel, station, and world has been infiltrated, not by advanced technology, but by humans who learned to hide in plain sight. Your security systems look for energy signatures, dimensional anomalies, psychic intrusions. They don't look for someone who walked through the front door with forged credentials and a convincing story. Queen voice Zekth rose on her multiple legs, towering over the human delegation. You're bluffing. Our hive mind would detect any foreign presence instantly. Would it? Vale asked. Are you certain that maintenance worker who's been servicing your ship's waste systems for 5 years isn't human? The one you've never paid attention to because the job is so beneath notice? The first cracks in the alien's confidence began to show. Several delegates were attempting to contact their ships only to find communications strangely delayed. Executor Vex High's mechanical form stood to its full height. Even if your claims are true, what could you possibly hope to achieve? A few saboteurs cannot stop the combined might of the Concordat. Vale looked at his watch. Dr. Vasquez, please proceed with the demonstration. She pressed the small sphere in her hand. Nothing visible happened, but every psychic being in the chamber suddenly recoiled. Something had changed in the fabric of space itself. We call it the Quiet Protocol, Vasquez explained calmly. Quantum cascade devices installed in key positions throughout your territories. They don't explode. They don't destroy. They simply disconnect things. Right now, the Zafrani dreadnought outside has lost all quantum cohesion in its primary power matrix. It's not damaged, it's just stopped. Stormsinger's form began fluctuating wildly as reports came in. The mighty dreadnought, pride of the Zafrani fleet, was dark and drifting. Vale continued walking slowly around the chamber. Here's what humanity proposes. You will withdraw all concordant forces from human space immediately. You will recognize Earth's sovereignty and our right to expand without interference. You will pay reparations for the 3 human colonies you destroyed during your warning demonstrations last year. The aliens' shock turned to outrage. Whisper of Stars manifested fully, its form blazing with interdimensional energy. You dare make demands? 1 ship disabled means nothing. We could obliterate your entire species in a day. Could you? Stone asked quietly. Could you do it before we activate the rest of the devices? They're not just on your ships. They're in your cities, your power stations, your food production facilities. 200 years we've been preparing. That's a lot of time to place a lot of very small, very simple devices in very important places. The hidden arsenal. The next 12 hours in Harmony's Gate passed intense deliberation. The Concordat delegates had retreated to their sections of the station, desperately trying to verify the humans' claims while maintaining an appearance of unconcern. Meanwhile, the human delegation remained in the assembly chamber, calmly eating sandwiches that Omar Hassan had somehow produced from his equipment bag. Executor Vex High finally returned, its psychic presence bristling with barely contained fury. Behind it, the other major delegates followed, their body language broadcasting their unease. The minor species representatives, those from smaller civilizations under concordant protection, huddled at the edges of the chamber, uncertain which side posed the greater threat. You have made extraordinary claims, Vex High began, its mental voice attempting to project authority it no longer felt certain of. The concordant requires proof beyond 1 disabled vessel. Vale finished his coffee, another inexplicably primitive touch that seemed to unnerve the aliens, and stood. Lieutenant Patel, please share the Syracuse files. The young officer pulled out what looked like an antique laptop computer, its thick plastic casing and physical keyboard drawing incredulous looks from species accustomed to neural interfaces and holographic controls. She typed for a moment, and suddenly every display system in the chamber activated simultaneously, including several the aliens hadn't known existed. The screens showed thousands of images, humans in various disguises working in alien facilities, technical readouts of concordant infrastructure with vulnerable points marked, videos of quantum cascade devices being installed in locations that should have been impossible to access, maps of infiltration networks spanning every major concordant world. But what caused the most shock were the timestamps. Some images dated back over a century. This is fabrication, Queen Voice Zeketh chittered desperately. Digital deception. Your primitive systems could never. Station Zephyr 9, Hassan interrupted, reading from his tablet. 3 years ago, your secondary plasma manifold developed a recurring fault. Maintenance crew chief named Korvac fixed it. Korvac was actually Maria Santos from Buenos Aires. She installed 17 cascade devices during the repair. He continued reading. The Morvac hive world of Zek Theta. 8 years ago, a mutation in your fungal food supplies was corrected by a specialist you hired through intermediaries. That specialist was Dr. James Chen. The cure he provided included nanoscale cascade triggers that have since been incorporated into every harvest. The litany continued. Each revelation was accompanied by proof, video recordings, biological samples, technical specifications. The Concordate's vast civilization had been infiltrated so thoroughly that there was hardly a system without human presence. Ambassador Tanaka stood and adjusted his glasses. You need to understand something about humanity. We've been the underdogs for our entire existence. We evolved on a world trying to kill us. We survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and each other. When we finally reached the stars and found you already there, claiming everything, demanding our submission, did you really think we would just accept it? The Etherean delegate phased through several dimensions rapidly, searching for deception. Even if all of this is true, you remain outnumbered. You cannot have infiltrated everywhere. We didn't need to, Vasquez explained. We studied your civilizations carefully. The Concordate's great strength is its interconnection. Your supply chains, communication networks, power grids, they're all linked. A cascade failure in one system triggers failures in others. We don't need to be everywhere. We just need to be in the right places. Vale pulled up a new display. This one showed a tactical analysis of Concordate space with critical nodes highlighted. The Nexus station at Aurelius Point processes 40% of your military communications. The dimensional gates at the Vorthan Crossroads handle 60% of your supply transportation. The psychic amplification arrays in the collective's core worlds coordinate your entire defensive network. We have devices in all of them. Stormsinger's gaseous form began to pulse with agitation. You're describing the destruction of galactic civilization. Trillions would die. Yes, Vale agreed simply. Which is why we're having this conversation instead of simply activating everything. Humanity doesn't want to destroy the galaxy. We want to live in it. As equals. Executor Vexhi's mechanical form moved forward threateningly. You speak of equality while holding a knife to our throat. Colonel Stone laughed, a sharp sound in the tense atmosphere. That's rich, coming from the civilization that destroyed 3 human colonies as a demonstration. How many primitive species have you absorbed over the millennia? How many civilizations have you stripped of their identity and independence? The truth of it hung in the air. The Concordate had built its empire on the assumption of superiority, absorbing lesser species whether they wished it or not. Now they faced a species that had refused to be absorbed and had spent 2 centuries preparing to prove why. Show them the Carthage Protocol, Vale ordered. Patel typed again, and a new schematic appeared. This one showed something different, not infiltration points or cascade devices, but something far more ambitious. It was a map of stellar positions throughout Concordate space, with calculations showing gravitational interactions, stellar wind patterns, and quantum field fluctuations. Vasquez walked to the display. The cascade devices were our insurance policy. The Carthage Protocol is our alternative. Using the devices in specific sequences, we can create resonance waves through the quantum foam underlying spacetime. The effects would be dramatic. She gestured, and the display showed a simulation. Stars throughout Concordate space began to pulse in synchronization. The pulses grew stronger, creating waves of gravitational distortion that would make faster-than-light travel impossible. Trade would cease. Communications would fail. The entire Concordate would be isolated, each world cut off from all others. You would trap yourselves too, Whisper of Stars observed. We would, Tanaka agreed. But humanity survived isolation for thousands of years. We're quite good at it. Can the Concordate say the same? How long would your empire last if every world had to survive on its own? The minor species delegates began murmuring among themselves. Many of them completely depended on Concordate supply chains for survival. The thought of isolation was terrifying. Queen Voice Zeketh suddenly lunged forward, her massive form moving with surprising speed toward the human delegation. She got within 3 meters before freezing in place, her legs locked rigid. Omar Hassan held up his tablet apologetically. Sorry about that. We activated the personal cascade devices you've been carrying. Don't worry, the paralysis is temporary. It'll wear off in about an hour. The demonstration was devastating in its simplicity. Every being in the chamber suddenly realized they might be carrying human devices without knowing it. When had they been planted? During maintenance, in their food, through their air systems? Executor Vexhi's psychic presence fluctuated wildly as it tried to process the situation. You've turned our entire civilization into a weapon against itself. No, Vale corrected. We've leveled the playing field. For 2 centuries, you've assumed that bigger meant better, that complexity meant superiority. But humans learned something else on Earth. Sometimes the smallest solution is the most effective. A virus is simpler than the organism it infects, but that doesn't make it less dangerous. The commander walked to the frozen form of Queen Voice. Zekathu, in 1 hour she'll be free. In 24 hours you'll give us your answer. Accept our terms, full recognition, reparations, and a guarantee of non-interference, or we begin the cascade. And if we call your bluff, Vexhi asked, if we choose to test whether you really have the will to destroy trillions? Vale met the executor's mechanical gaze steadily. 6 months ago you destroyed the colony of New Sarajevo. 8 million humans, including my daughter. Do you really want to test my resolve? The silence stretched until Patel broke it by showing another display. This one was simpler, a countdown timer showing 18 hours remaining. We've given you one additional demonstration to consider, she said. The asteroid mining station, at Kelvin Deep. Population 0, fully automated. Check your sensors in about now. Every delegate with functioning communications suddenly received alerts. Kelvin Deep, one of the Concordate's primary resource extraction facilities, had simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded, just gone. The Cascade devices had unraveled its molecular structure so thoroughly that only a cloud of elementary particles remained. That was one station, Vasquez said quietly. We have devices in thousands of locations. Make your choice. The Concordate delegates filed out slowly, except for Queen Voice Zekath, still frozen in her attack position. The minor species representatives lingered, some approaching the human delegation with what might have been respect or fear. As the chamber emptied, Hassan turned to Vale. Think they'll actually surrender? Vale watched the countdown timer continue, its inexorable march. They'll try to find another way first. They'll look for the devices, try to disable them, maybe even attempt a preemptive strike on Earth. But in the end, they'll realize what we've known all along. What's that? Patel asked. That the most dangerous predator isn't the biggest or the strongest. It's the one that's been watching from the shadows, learning your weaknesses and preparing for the day you finally notice it exists. The New Order. The final 6 hours before the deadline became the most frantic period in Concordate history. Across Idori, thousands of worlds, security forces searched desperately for the Cascade devices. They found some, obvious ones, planted where they would be discovered. Each successful detection gave them hope, until they realized a terrible truth. For every device they found, there were likely hundreds they didn't. In the assembly chamber of Harmony's Gate, the human delegation waited with unnerving patience. Vale had authorized them to rest in shifts, but none did. They understood the weight of this moment. 2 centuries of preparation, countless lives sacrificed in secret, all leading to these final hours. With 1 hour remaining, the Concordate delegates returned. But this time they brought reinforcements. Military commanders, scientific advisors, intelligence officials. The chamber filled with hundreds of beings from across the galaxy. It was meant to be intimidating. Instead, it felt like desperation. Executor Vexhi spoke first, its psychic voice reaching every mind present. We have analyzed your so-called Cascade devices. Our scientists believe they can be neutralized. Dr. Vasquez stood and smiled. May I ask how? Quantum field harmonics, Stormsinger interjected, the Zafrani's gaseous form pulsing with confidence. If we synchronize our defensive grids to match the Cascade frequency, we can create a nullification wave. Excellent thinking, Vasquez said genuinely. That would work perfectly against the devices you've found. Unfortunately, those operate on frequency 7.2841. The ones you haven't found use randomly shifting frequencies between 3.1 and 9.7. Oh, and there are about 12,000 different variants, each with unique triggering mechanisms. She pulled out another simple metal sphere. This one, for example, is triggered by attempting to scan it with anything above basic electromagnetic radiation. Would you like to test your nullification wave on it? The silence was answer enough. Commander Vale stood and walked to the center of the chamber. Let me be clear about humanity's position. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to destroy the Concordate. We want to exist, freely and safely, without the threat of absorption or annihilation. You achieved that through deception and infiltration, Vexhai accused. We achieved that through survival, Vale corrected. Every species in this room has its own evolutionary advantages. The Zephrani can manipulate energy fields. The Morvac share a collective consciousness. The Etherians exist across multiple dimensions. Humanity, we adapt. We improvise. We survive. A new voice spoke from among the minor species delegates. It was Ambassador Thymel of the Vereki, a small civilization of only 3 worlds. What would this new order look like, if the Concordate agrees to your terms? Ambassador Tanaka stood to answer. Each species maintains complete sovereignty over their core worlds. Trade continues, but as agreements between equals, not mandates from above. The cascade devices remain as insurance, but dormant as long as peace is maintained. You would hold the galaxy hostage forever, Queen Voice Zekth accused, having recovered from her paralysis. No more than you've held it through military might, Colonel Stone replied. The only difference is our deterrent is invisible and requires no maintenance, no vast fleets, no constant shows of force. It's actually quite economical. Lieutenant Patel activated a new display. This one showed economic projections. The resources currently spent on military dominance redirected to development, exploration, and scientific advancement. The numbers were staggering. The Concordate spends 42% of its total economic output maintaining military superiority, she explained. Our solution costs nothing to maintain and actually encourages cooperation over conflict. Whisper of stars manifested in multiple dimensions simultaneously, a sign of extreme agitation. You cannot expect us to simply accept this, to live knowing that at any moment humanity could end everything. Why not? Vale asked. We've lived with that knowledge for 2 centuries. We've watched you destroy civilizations that resisted absorption. We've seen you strip entire worlds of resources. We've counted the species that no longer exist because they inconvenienced your expansion. How is what we're doing any different from what you've done, except that we're offering you a choice? The minor species delegates were growing more vocal, many expressing support for the human position. They had lived under Concordate rule for millennia, never truly free, always subject to the whims of the major powers. With 30 minutes remaining, Executor Vexhai made one last attempt. If we agree to negotiations, will you deactivate the devices? No, Vale said simply. The devices stay, but we can discuss their management. Perhaps a joint commission with representatives from all species to oversee their use. Checks and balances to prevent any one species, including humanity, from abusing this power. You would share control? The surprise in Vexhai's psychic voice was evident. We would share responsibility, Tanaka corrected. The cascade system would become the galaxy's mutual defense, not just humanity's weapon. Any use would require consensus, except in cases of direct aggression. The offer changed everything. Suddenly, the minor species saw an opportunity not just for survival, but for actual participation in galactic governance. Dr. Vasquez added another element. We are also willing to share the scientific principles behind the cascade technology. Not how to build the devices, that knowledge stays with humanity, but the physics behind them. Imagine what your scientists could do with a completely new understanding of quantum mechanics. Hassan had been quietly working on his tablet throughout the discussion. Now he looked up. Commander, I'm receiving multiple signals from Earth. They're asking for status. Vale nodded. Tell them we're in final negotiations. The weight of those words settled over the chamber. Final negotiations, either peace or the greatest catastrophe in galactic history. With 15 minutes remaining, the concordant delegates huddled together. Their discussion was heated, with multiple translation systems struggling to keep up with the rapid exchanges. The minor species waited anxiously, some openly stating their support for the human proposal. Finally, with 5 minutes left on the countdown, Executor Vexhai returned to the center of the chamber. Its mechanical form seemed somehow diminished, the psychic presence less overwhelming than before. The Galactic Concordat accepts humanity's terms. The words echoed through the chamber, through the station, and would soon echo through the galaxy. The age of concordant dominance was ending. A new age of enforced equality was beginning. Vale allowed himself a small smile. Then let's discuss the details. The negotiations that followed took 3 days. Every point was debated, every concern addressed. The Cascade devices would remain, but their control would be shared through a new organization, the Galactic Peace Council, with equal representation from all species. Humanity would provide the locations of 60% of the devices, keeping the rest as insurance. The Concordat would pay reparations for the destroyed human colonies, but spread over a century to prevent economic collapse. Most importantly, a new charter was drafted for galactic civilization. No species could be absorbed without consent. No world could be stripped without compensation. No civilization could be destroyed for refusing to conform. The minor species gained the most. For the first time in millennia, they had a voice backed by power. The Cascade threat protected them as much as it protected humanity. 6 months later, Admiral Sarah Chen, Vale's successor after his retirement, stood in what had once been the Concordat High Command. The massive structure now housed the Galactic Peace Council. Representatives from every known species worked side by side, managing trade disputes, coordinating exploration efforts, and most importantly, maintaining the Cascade Defense Network. Her assistant, formerly Lieutenant Patel, now Captain, entered with a report. The Zafrani have completed their reparation payment for this quarter. The Morvac are requesting additional Cascade devices for their outer colonies. They're worried about raids from beyond the galactic rim. Chen nodded, making notes on her tablet, a deliberately primitive one, as had become humanity's signature. Approve the Morvac request, but send human technicians to install them. We maintain the monopoly on Cascade technology. The Etherians are complaining again about the Cascade fields interfering with their dimensional phasing, Patel added. They've been complaining for 6 months. If they haven't found a solution yet, they're not trying hard enough. Any word from the exploration fleets? 3 new species discovered in the outer spiral, all pre-FTL. The Council is debating contact protocols. Chen looked out the vast window at the ships coming and going from the station. Vessels from 100 different species, working together not because they were forced to by military might, but because the alternative, mutual destruction, was too terrible to contemplate. You know what the irony is? Chen said to Patel. The Concordat spent millions of years building their empire through force. We changed everything in 6 months with devices that don't actually do anything unless activated. Patel smiled. The most powerful weapon is the one you never have to use. Exactly. And as long as everyone believes we will use them if necessary, we never will have to. Outside, the galaxy continued its ancient dance of stars and civilizations. But now, for the first time in eons, the smallest voices could speak as loudly as the largest. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more impressive. They had made it fair. The Cascade devices remained silent sentinels in the dark, a reminder that sometimes the meek do inherit the stars, not through weakness, but through patience, cunning, and the willingness to do what others considered impossible. 2 centuries of preparation, 6 months of change, and now, an eternity of possibilities stretched before all species equally. Humanity's fury had indeed broken the galaxy, broken its chains, broken its assumptions, and broken its cycle of dominance and submission. In its place rose something new. A galaxy where survival depended not on strength but on cooperation. And in the quiet corners of human space, in secure facilities known only to a select few, engineers and scientists continued their work. Because humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. In a universe full of predators, the only true safety came from being the most dangerous species in the room while choosing not to act on it. Peace through superior firepower, invisibly, maintained, eternally vigilant. The galaxy would never be the same.